guys, thank you for clicking on this video. As you guys already know that I like to talk about my mindset and my MMA training, and then I like to relate that to my real life. And so one of the biggest influencers in my life that have contributed to my journey is Tazz. So I am excited for you guys to listen to this because I wanted to show his mindset and his journey from his point of view, and I will show you guys videos as we both talk about it. So,
cool.
Hey. So, Sean, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So, I'm Sean. I got the nickname Tazz about 12 years ago from my cousin Anton. That's a whole video in itself. But basically, I started wrestling in high school. I went to Loyola Academy, class of 2010. When I got there, they told me that I had to do some kind of extracurricular activity. At the time, I wasn't into sports. I watched pro wrestling, but actually doing sports wasn't a thing. So that summer, my cousin Anton and I spent an entire 3 months trying to find a sport. So we tried baseball, we tried a bunch of different things. I knew football wasn't going to be something. I was 108 pounds in high school. So football was out of the picture. One sport that I kind of gravitated towards, I'm not going to say that I was ever good at it, but it was the one that of all the sports we tried, I was decent at, which was basketball. You know, so basketball was a winter sport at Loyola. So I had the first few months to kind of get accustomed to a new school, start high school, try to meet some new friends. I went to Loyola with the idea that I had friends, and then within a few weeks I already knew that I needed new friends. I tried doing all like the youth groups and just like the meetings, the clubs and all that. That wasn't for me, you know. So once winter came along, I tried out for the basketball team. I'm not a tall guy. Went to school with Michael Jordan's kids. There's no room for me on the basketball team with Michael Jordan's kids. And that's when I found wrestling. Wrestling was a no-cut sport. I was into pro wrestling. I thought it would be cool that I could call myself a wrestler. And little did I know that that decision was going to change my life forever.
Wow. So, if you guys have heard of the Warrior video that Sean and I created, he talks a little bit about like where Warrior comes into play, and a big part of the Warrior mindset that Sean has created is from like all of the experiences that you have gone through, especially growing up. So knowing that you were you started the sport with, I mean, pretty much you started in another sport.
Yeah.
And then from that you moved to wrestling. And then how has wrestling been a big part of your life?
So wrestling's been a huge part in a lot of different ways. I don't think if I was a pro wrestling fan, I don't think I ever would have done wrestling in high school. It didn't seem like something that I would be comfortable doing. I used to wear socks in the pool. I used to be, you know, I wear sweatshirts and sweatpants during the summer because I was just so weirded out by being so skinny. You know, so in wrestling, they're wearing the tight singlets and everything, and it didn't seem like something that I would have been comfortable doing unless I had that enjoyment of watching professional wrestling. So I started watching professional wrestling when I was like 7 years old, and it kind of always was a big part of my life. And so once I got to high school and started wrestling, that's what kind of got me comfortable to do something, to step out of my comfort zone and something like that, to try it. You know, and then once I got there, you know, I didn't meet great friends. I found what a team was, and I found camaraderie, because it was a bunch of guys that, you know, either came from a football background or they've been wrestling since they were in kindergarten, or people that were in the same boat as me was just trying to find something new. Wherever we came from, we came together as a team in wrestling. And then the coaches that I met, you know, there's good coaches, there's bad coaches, but I met some really great coaches in my time in wrestling.
So we're, like I said, we're still going back to the beginning of you, because as of now, I have only known the Tazz for now, for being my coach and my best friend and a mentor. But what I like to more get into is more like how have you built that mindset? And I can see that that you build like the camaraderie and being loyal as a person and having that friendship and just being an honest person overall. But like, how is it that like when you started wrestling as a sport, like how is it that you've developed that over the years?
So everything that you just described started in wrestling. You know, I wasn't an athletic guy. Like I said, I was 108 pounds. And I had never wrestled.
I mean, he's not 100.
Not anymore. Not anymore. You know, but it was very difficult for me to make that jump. And, you know, always being weirded out by being so skinny. And now I'm wearing a singlet. I've never done wrestling like that. Like the only concept I had of wrestling was professional wrestling. And the wrestling in high school was totally different than that. And I knew that going in, but I didn't know exactly to what extent I was getting myself into. And it was very difficult for me at the beginning to make that jump. And my very first match I lost in maybe 15 seconds. I spent most of the time warming up by just adjusting the singlet because I didn't feel comfortable wearing the singlet. You know, and it was like that for a while. It took me, you know, the wrestling season started in November. I didn't pick up my first win until maybe the end of December. Into January, we were having matches every weekend, multiple times a week, sometimes 2 to 3 matches per week, and I was losing all of them. And the loyalty came from.
Is that why you're so persistent?
Yeah, because I could have quit. You know, there's nothing holding me there, but it wasn't in my nature, and that was something that my dad taught me. Once you start something, you finish it. You know, and then the loyalty came from my wrestling coaches. In freshman year, I had Coach Press and Coach Favaro. No matter how many times I lost, no matter how badly I lost, they were still there. They still backed me up. They still taught me. And Coach Press was the one that was in my corner from the first time that I won. And his voice is forever implanted in my head with the instructions of winning that match. The first time I pinned somebody, I will forever hear his voice in my head telling me those things. Hips down, hips down, hips down. So now, as we grapple a lot, you don't understand where I get my hips down to keep my weight on somebody. And even at 180 pounds, they taught me how to use that 108 pounds as best as possible. Me being a smaller guy and moves that I still use to this day, you know, the power hat. Coach Favaro came to me and my training partner, and he showed that to us specifically because we were smaller guys. And he gave us little tips as smaller guys to make our half Nelson even more powerful. To use leverage over muscle, because I was 108 pounds, my partner was 89 pounds. You know, so they really helped a lot. You know, they never judged us for losing, they never judged us for being small. They worked with us every single day.
And you know, I feel that with our training, because I am one of the smallest people in class. And then when it comes to sparring, like I am the smallest person too. So sometimes when you're telling me like, oh, do this, do that, and it's like, I have a question whether or not you understood exactly what I was talking about. Because you would tell me like, keep your hands out, chin low, like get in the pocket, and I'm just like, you do it, right? Yep. But then it's like, you actually understand what I'm talking about, especially when we're grappling or anything, like you understand that part. And now that you're telling me now, it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. You do know exactly what I'm talking about. So I see that you not only do the work, I mean, you coach us through the process, but it's because you lived it.
Yeah. I would never ask any of my students to do something that I didn't do. You know, so the things that I coach on are things that I've been through. Like I said, 108 pounds in high school. When I made that transition into MMA, my beginning years of MMA, I was 123 pounds, you know, and then the next person closest to my weight was 145 pounds, you know, so that's still the 20-pound difference. So I was always used to being the smaller person, which is now that, you know, I'm putting on weight and stuff, it's a little bit different for me. It's like, it's a mind switch to say, okay, you're not a small guy anymore, you can't use that as an excuse anymore, stop being lazy, whatever is going on, you know, but I've always been a smaller guy. And I had to learn how to wrestle with bigger people. I had to learn how to fight with bigger people.
There was something right now that you just said, like I would not tell you guys something that I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Where did you learn that?
Vince McMahon.
So Vince McMahon is the CEO of WWE.
As crazy as it sounds, you know, professional wrestling to this day, like I don't watch it as religiously as I once did, but I keep up with it. Vince McMahon's been the head honcho since the beginning of my viewing of it. Every time he wanted a wrestler to do something, he did it first. And even just, he's 73 years old now, and at this past WrestleMania, there's a wrestler that didn't want to do a certain jump from, they were in their gym, I don't know exactly where that jump, how big of a jump that was. It was like a 6-foot jump that a wrestler had to fall backwards doing. He didn't want to do it. At 73 years old, Vince McMahon went out there and he did the jump to prove to the wrestler that it was safe. You know, and Vince has been in the ring and he does all the things that he wants his performers to do, and that kind of always stuck with him, you know. So running a gym and being a head coach of a team wasn't necessarily my plan, but once I got into it, I knew what kind of business owner and what kind of leader I wanted to be based off of the leaders I looked up to, like McMahon. You know, my dad owns his own business, so I took bits and pieces of these people that I looked up to apply it to myself, you know. So if Vince was the type of leader, and you know, he's got his faults, but he's been in business for this long, he's got to be doing something right. He does a lot of things wrong. There's some things that he does right, a lot of things that he does right as well, and I respect that. So instead of just trying to emulate him completely, I'm going to take the aspects of what he does in his company that work, and I'm going to apply that to myself. It's the same thing with everybody else.
Reminds me of like Bruce Lee's, when it says like discard what, taking what is useful, discard what is useless.
Exactly.
And you practice a lot of Bruce Lee's philosophies when it comes to life. And then you practice that in your personal life with the people that you look up to. One person that you always mentioned is The Undertaker, that you didn't mention right now, and I was like, I guess it's like, okay, you know, he's always talking about the freaking Undertaker, but that's, he's a big one in your life, and that's, I do want to talk about him and what you see in him, and how you've learned or what have you learned from him, because, you know, in our circle, like, you were always talking about what he does and the life teachings, but I want to show people what you see from that.
Yeah, so The Undertaker was one of the first wrestlers. Once I started watching WWE, I started off with a different company. Once I started watching WWE, Undertaker was that guy. He was the first wrestler from that company that I watched. So it kind of, when I started watching it more frequently, the image of him kind of stuck with me. But The Undertaker is really one of the reasons that I made the jump from wrestling to MMA. Every interview that I saw, he was always talking about MMA, always talking about MMA. And I got curious, I was like, what's MMA? You know, so I looked it up and I read about it. The first taste I got of it, my cousin was watching TV, and she was watching Pride Fighting Championship. And there was obviously the Japanese promotion, the Japan-based promotion, where they fought in a ring still. You know, so it caught my attention because they were in a ring, like wrestling, but I saw these guys were really beating the hell out of each other. And that was my first taste of MMA.
Damn, and you know what? At first when I met you, I was like, okay, it's like, you know, when you see people and then, like, when I first met you, I'm like thinking, okay, he's done this all his life. You know, he's been exposed to MMA all his life, and then when we're watching fights, you just observe and you know exactly what they're gonna do. It's like, okay, you've done this for a while. I mean, you have 2+ years, but it's like, I didn't think that you were into the sport from the very beginning. Like, I didn't know that you started from wrestling.
Because even when I saw that, when my cousin was watching, it didn't catch my attention.
That's crazy.
And I wouldn't watch it, you know. But then there was one day, and I remember the day because I ended up spending the whole day watching it. Once I got a hold of it,
obsessed with
you know, and that was kind of my personality. I found something and I wanted to know everything about it. So, you know, The Undertaker kept talking about MMA, and then he started bringing in some of the, you know, he always wore the MMA gloves in his performances. He started using some of the moves from jiu-jitsu. He had a very boxing style way of punching through his performances. So there was one Saturday, I remember it vividly, I was just flipping through the channels and then I see The Ultimate Fighter. You know, so I was like, oh, this is the show that The Undertaker was talking about. Let me see what this is about. There's 20 minutes left in the episode. Let's give it a shot. I ended up watching it for the rest of the day. My parents came home, they're like, what are you watching? And I was like, I don't know, but this is awesome. and he kind of got it started just by talking about it and started bringing it into his world, into what I was watching. And then it intrigued me, it sparked a curiosity, which turned into interest, and that's what got me on my path.
Wow. So that curiosity led to interest
Mm-hmm.
in lifestyle.
Yep.
That's crazy. And then I see like the power like of influencers, like you have these people that are such great role models, and then thanks to that now you observe what they do, and it's a very big for people that like the guidance, because I feel like that's what we all need. We need people to look up to that will show the example, because not a lot of us have it. Me growing up, I didn't have that, so I didn't know where to go or who to follow. And because of that, like I made a lot of wrong decisions. But that's where I see it from you, is like you were able to grab or take in like the good qualities of your actual role models that you had, like The Undertaker, Vince McMahon. Like, did you ever see yourself in the sport that you do now?
No, because even after that day of watching The Ultimate Fighter, I still didn't see myself doing the sport. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, and I became a regular of watching it. And that was around the same time that Brock Lesnar made the jump from WWE to UFC. So that added an extra layer of me wanting to watch it to see what a professional wrestler would do in MMA. And then once I got into MMA again, it was putting myself fully in there, and then I started looking up fighters, and I started looking at these fighters, and I started admiring guys like Randy Couture and Chuck Liddell, Dan Henderson, Rampage Jackson. I started looking at these guys, and I grew a real deep respect, because I couldn't believe that they would go out there and get into the fights that they're getting into and want to do it again. I was like, you're getting punched in the face, like, why are you trying to do this for a living?
But that's kind of like what you did with wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, you were going every week to the tournaments and you were losing, but then you were still
Yeah, but I didn't get all bloody like them, and there was just a certain level of respect to be able to do something like that. And so, through all this, I still didn't see myself doing it. I had my experience with wrestling, and I had such a hard time getting just one aspect of it, just the grappling part of it. My freshman year was rough. My sophomore year, I did a little bit better, and then I stopped junior and senior year. So I struggled enough to get the wrestling portion, and now we're adding punches, we're adding kicks, we're adding knees, we're adding submissions to all that. I like, these guys are crazy. But it wasn't until I started going through some stuff in my life that I needed a lifestyle change that I went in it. And once I went in it, just like I did with pro wrestling, just like I did with watching MMA, once I started it.
Did you do this as a necessity?
I did it as a mental necessity.
Okay.
I was in my senior year of high school when I started training MMA. And I went through a heartbreak, and I needed an outlet to let out my frustration, to let out my sadness, to let out my anger, all these feelings that came with that heartbreak. I needed a way to let it out. And it was just a matter of walking to my bank, and I had to make a deposit. Right next to my bank there was a fitness gym. And on the window it said, forming MMA classes now. I was a block away from my house. I was like, why not give it a shot? I called them up, they said they're meeting once a week, $60 a month. I was like, I called up my cousin, I told him what I was doing. He's like, all right, let's go next week. So we started the next week. And then within 3 months, 4 months maybe, I went from one of 6 students to the only student that was there.
So 6 people started MMA, and then you opened that.
Yeah, and then it was me and my trainer for the next year and a half.
And even that didn't stop.
No, he focused primarily on kickboxing, which I didn't mind because I just, this is senior year, so this was a year after my finishing wrestling. So I didn't know what to do with my hands and my feet. I knew takedowns and I knew control on the ground, but I didn't know how to throw a punch through kicks. And that, like at that point, I started training, and I never thought that I was going to compete in it or be a coach or be a trainer. I enjoyed punching stuff because it felt good. It felt good mentally, it felt good emotionally to punch and kick stuff.
So when people like sometimes like associate like punching, kicking, like for those that don't know, it's like you see other people do it, it's like very aggressive.
Yeah.
It's a very aggressive sport and it's very violent.
Yeah.
Those that don't do MMA or do any combat sport, they look at the sport as in a very aggressive sport. But what was your mindset like at the moment when you started?
When I started, I still had it, and that's why I started it to begin with, because I had anger. So I was like, this is a sport for angry people, because you just you can punch stuff, and it was that brutality. I wanted to mask the emotional pain that I was feeling with physical pain. And then I always tell people it was love at first punch. The second I threw my first punch, and it was just like, this is awesome. You know, and then the more time I spent with it and feeling the results of it and learning that it's not just a matter of throwing punches, because I would be out there sparring with my trainer and I would just go out there and try to take his head off, and he made it look so easy to make me miss, and then he blasted me in the face. And I'd throw the other side and he'd blast me in the face again. You know, and then he brought in one of his buddies who was like 5 feet tall, but he did a lot of kickboxing, that's all he did. And I couldn't hit that little guy. And he was 50 years old, he was an older guy. And I couldn't get him. And he was beating the crap out of me. You know, so that started teaching me that, okay, maybe anger is not the way to go with this. Maybe there's some kind of tranquility that needs to be held, like in your heart, in order to be able to control everything. Because once I threw that punch and I missed, I had no idea what was going to happen next. And that needed to stop. I needed to be able to control whether I landed or whether I missed. I needed to know where my body was going.
It's very good training. So you just said right now that you needed to have that peace.
Yeah.
How did you get to that point?
Like getting my ass kicked enough to realize that something wasn't working.
Ooh.
And and that's kind of another thing that I learned from MMA to apply it to life. If something's not working the way that you want it to work, you need to change something. You might not, you don't have to like give it up completely.
Change about yourself.
Change about yourself, change about, you know, strategy, change something. For me, it was changing my mindset first. I had to change my mindset.
I knew it was getting good. See? Let me know in the comments on what you think so far. Thank you guys for watching that first part of Tazz's evolution. Make sure you click on the subscribe button so you can get a notification on when the second or possibly the third part of his evolution. I cannot wait for you guys to watch it, dude. Don't forget to follow the gym's page at Warrior Evolution MMA. And don't forget to follow Tazz on his personal Instagram is at TazzMMA_fitness. And my Instagram is Naynay_MMA_CMM.